Hey everyone, first I just want to ask all of you to let me know where you're from right now. So just go ahead in the chat area, just type in your location, and let's see if we have a nice representative audience representing the entire swath of North America or maybe the globe. Let's see what we got. So we got a number of, looks like we've got some people on the East Coast, although we've got Janet out there in Oregon. We've got a couple from the Midwest as well. We've got Jed, got some folks from St. Mary's. Good. So a couple of folks from overseas also. So I am coming to you, as you'll find out later on in this presentation, from my glorious 500 square foot apartment in Brooklyn, New York. Welcome everyone to the northwest corner of my kitchen. It's very lovely to be coming from my kitchen to to all of you. So today we're going to be talking about, as you all know, tales from the faculty side, revenge of the vendor-turned-instructor. This is a part 3 of a presentation I've given a couple of times at previous BB Worlds, where basically I talk about my life in educational technology. For those who don't know me, in some capacity or another, I've been with Blackboard and some previous web conferencing companies since 2000. My 14th anniversary is coming up in about 2 months. So the premise of the presentation was that for years I had spent, from basically 2000 to 2009, I spent my life kind of crowing about the wonderful benefits of educational technology, specifically interactive ones like this. And finally, push came to shove, where I had to sort of put my money where my mouth was and actually started teaching online. And I really came to try to see if everything I had been telling everyone else about for 9 years was actually true, if engaging interactive educational technologies were really as wonderful as I had been telling people for a decade that they were. I won't tell you the outcome just yet, but I think you'll all be happy. So first I'm going to do a quick little segue and talk about Blackboard Collaborate web conferencing, which we're using right now. I know for many years we've obviously positioned this as a piece of technology that's terrific for holding online classes, online office hours, study groups, meetings, trainings, what have you. But we actually came across a really excellent use about 1.5 years ago that I want to share with all of you. This is courtesy of the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg. So it was a Thursday evening. It was a 8 o'clock live online course. All the students were logged in from their homes or offices. And a few minutes into the class, one of the students, just sitting there like all of you are right now, sort of raises her hand and interrupts the instructor and says, I might need to step away for a couple of moments. I think somebody has broken into my house. Seems like a perfectly reasonable reason to duck out of the class for a few minutes. So obviously the entire attention of the class turns away from the lesson that's being taught to the student in distress, and they start immediately. The chat box and the audio just sort of explodes. Everyone's giving her advice. Some are saying, you know, go hide in a bedroom, go call your husband, go grab your shotgun from your dresser. Whatever the case might be, you know, it's a terrifying situation. So everyone's talking both textually and audibly and giving her advice, and the student runs into her bedroom closet a couple seconds later, and she actually has her laptop open, logged into her class the entire time. So that's a very good conscientious student, if I've ever heard of one. So she's literally got her laptop open, sort of cowering in her bedroom closet, and she says, oh, I think the intruder is now in my bedroom, like literally inches away on the other side of the bedroom door from where she is kind of sitting crouched with her computer. So it's a harrowing situation. And suddenly, and so the whole time, obviously all the feedback is coming in from her classmates, and long story short is that the burglar ends up overhearing all the audio coming from her laptop. They hear all the voices, all of her classmates, her instructor, and flees the home because he got spooked by all the voices, wasn't really sure what was going on. And so they ended up catching the guy a couple of hours later down the street in the neighborhood. So the point of this introductory anecdote is that As often as we've talked about Blackboard Collaborate Web Conferencing being a great tool for live instruction, help, or trainings, is that apparently it's also an excellent security tool as well. So as you're building out your own school and personal security measures, certainly include this high up on your priority list. All right, hooray for silly anecdotes. Now we can back to the regularly scheduled programming. Okay, so a couple of things I want to do to kind of set this up. First, obviously, we've all had the hunch for years that using interactive, engaging technology is going to be good, but we're always trying to find sort of data points that support that. And this was a good one from a couple of years ago. This was a survey of instructional technologists across the United States. And simply you see here, 85% of people who responded to this survey believe that technology plays an increasingly large role in student engagement and participation. And obviously, the big piece that we're concerned about today is that key term there, student engagement. We obviously are always talking about how, particularly in an online environment, we don't want students to be isolated, and we think this is certainly one good way of doing that. So I'm going to give you 30 more seconds of background, but I want to actually have you just give you some feedback first. So right above all of our names, you see that little checkbox with a caret pull-down menu. That'll open that up. So just let me know how many of you are familiar not just with Blackboard Collaborate Web Conferencing, but with all of the offerings that Blackboard Collaborate offers. So if you're aware of all of the offerings beyond web conferencing, give me a check. If you're only aware of the web conferencing piece that we're using right now for this very presentation, give me an X. And I'm gonna guess it's probably about 50-50, but let's see how those come in. All right, so looks like it's actually about a 2-to-1 close. Keep giving me those votes. Again, give me a check if you only are familiar, or give me a check if you're familiar with the whole breadth of Blackboard Collaborate, and an X if you're only familiar with web conferencing, which is what we're using right now. Okay, so looks like my prediction is about right. About half of you are only familiar with this, half of you are familiar all the way around. So just to kind of let you know what I'm going to be talking about in the next 40 minutes or so, and actually I might even be faster now. I'd have you all out of here by about 20 or quarter till the top of the hour. So clearly today we are using web conferencing. It's obviously, as I've just referenced a couple of times, a great way to hold really anything that you do in a face-to-face environment. This is a terrific platform for it. But there are also some other pieces you might not be aware of. So obviously there is a complete mobile component of this as well that's been developed for a couple of years, available for Android, iOS, and so forth. But what you may not know is that there are actually two other offerings, part of the Blackboard Collaborate suite. One of them is Enterprise Instant Messaging. I'll get to that in a little bit more in a second, or actually in a few minutes later on in the presentation. And I know you're probably already thinking to yourselves, well, why do I need instant messaging if I already have, and my students already have GChat and Google Talk, or I'm sorry, same thing, MSN, AIM, whatever the case might be. I'll explain that and there's no reason in a second, but basically the reason that this is useful is because all of your students are using different IAM platforms today. And then the other piece, which I'm also going to show a lot about in a couple of moments, is the voice authoring piece, which are a little bit different in terms of what Collaborate offers. When people think of Collaborate, they think of real-time live interaction. But voice authoring is actually a way to add some interactive components that are actually asynchronous and self-paced, and I'll get to all of those in a second. So actually, I'll skip some products. Actually, I'll skip some of the nuts and bolts. Let's get a little bit to why we're here. A little bit more about why we're here. So. About me, as I said, I've been at Blackboard for a very long time. I've been, for the last 6 or 7 years, working with many of you in sort of a marketing community customer capacity where I'm really trying to hear and collect a lot of the stories that you're doing out there at your schools on a daily basis. And I try to kind of be your voice, your vehicle to share those stories with the rest of the world. Obviously, I see a ton of familiar faces here in this chat area. I'm sorry, in the attendance list, and I think it's been really the best part about my job is kind of hearing your stories, hearing all the cool, fun, innovative things you've been doing, and really help sharing those with the rest of the world, the rest of the Blackboard community, to kind of inspire them, to give them tips, tricks, best practices, and so forth, kind of like we're doing today. So as I said, I've been with this company since 2000, and then starting in 2009, I took on an additional role as well, where I became an adjunct professor of creative writing at Holmes Community College. The reason it's creative writing is that I actually have an MFA in nonfiction creative writing, because everyone is clamoring for people with degrees in nonfiction creative writing. It's by far the hottest hiring field in the economy today. So I encourage all of your everyone you know to get an MFA in nonfiction creative writing. But it is actually a terminal degree. So a couple of years, so back in 2009, I thought I had been considering teaching for a while. And so I actually approached several customers like yourselves with whom I'd worked over the years and really just kind of put it out there. I said, hey, I've got a terminal degree. I've done a lot of writing, which I'll show you in a second. If you need anyone at your school to teach online, let me know. And I literally got a call a day later from some of the folks at Holmes Community College, which is in central Mississippi. And here we are. So kind of cool. So my life as a vendor. Obviously, I've been at Blackboard for a long time, since the acquisition in 2010. Before that, there were many iterations of the web conferencing product that we use today. Once it was called Wimba, once it was called Horizon Wimba, once it was called Horizon Live back in 2000, 2001. So it's been a long road, and even before that, I started at a portal company called Student Online in 1998. So I've for 16 years I've been within this sort of educational technology world, and similarly, I've always, we all have to have passions beyond our day-to-day vocations. So I've always been doing a lot of writing. I started out actually, my first career was as a journalist, writing for a magazine in Philadelphia. I also have written for a number of weeklies, such as the Philadelphia Weekly, the Philadelphia City Paper. I've written for, been published in a number of literary journals. One a couple of years ago called The Morning News. Even though it sounds like a daily newspaper, it's actually one of the better literary journals in the country. Check it out sometime. It's got a ton of great stuff. It's all usually very short, 1,000 to 3,000 word pieces, so it's very quick, very palatable. I was editor-in-chief of a magazine called Nerd Night, the magazine, that had exactly 4 whopping issues. It actually scooped the New Yorker a few times, so we were pretty proud of that. My degree is from the New School, and sorry for sort of barfing out my writing background to all of you. But as I said on some social media the last couple of days, I would be remiss if I did not mention that I actually wrote a sequel for the greatest movie ever made called Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD. It's a very serious film made by a very serious film company called Troma Films, which has also made such wonderful films as Romeo and Juliet and The Toxic Avenger and Surf Nazis Must Die. It's very high-quality movies that you can, if you want to check those out sometime. So I think it was kind of fun when I was looking for the writing position, is that I could bring in this weird amalgamation of fiction, nonfiction, and journalism writing into the program. And of course, a couple of years ago, which I sincerely recommend that none of you ever read, I wrote a book a few years ago. It's a collection of personal essays, sort of snarkily titled called It's Okay to Like Sports, How Women, Artists, and Intellectuals Can Find Cultural Value in Athletics. It was sort of a sarcastic title on purpose. That was basically it's basically a series of personal essays from my own life about how kind of athletics have played all kinds of different roles in terms of how I think about finances, how I have conversations with people who come from different backgrounds, how I'm still a diehard Cleveland sports loyalist. I know it's not a cool thing to admit, even though I lived in the East Coast for the last 20 years. So in personal essay is my own preference in terms of it's my own preferred medium of writing. Yes, Jed, Cleveland does rock. There's actually a great survey that came out, or a study came out 2 days ago that, of course, the Cleveland sports teams in the 3 major sports collectively had the worst winning percentage of teams of any city in the country. So, we're proud people. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff here. So, push comes to shove. Are we going to find out when I'm teaching if I was really crowing about the good stuff of collaboration technology, or if I was going to eat crow? So, I first haven't had a lot of experience in terms of really crowing about technology. I hosted a online lecture series through this for years, in which we really wanted to kind of bring all kinds of ideas of educational technology to all of you. The series premiered in 2000. It ended about a year ago. In that case, we had over 500 webinars with 1,000 guest presenters, always really professing and talking about the wonderful needs of educational technology that's interactive and engaging. I presented at hundreds of conferences. You've probably seen me at those too, so I won't even get into the details there. So here's really why I believe in this stuff. So what's really kind of great about this type of technology is that it benefits both the academic and the administrative side of the house. We see here just in 1 year, Iowa Digital Learning Academy, which is it's basically the online public school of the state of Idaho. Just in 1 year doing teacher training, instead of bringing teachers from the sort of north and eastern corners of Idaho into Boise where they would do professional development training, they decided to do it all online through this web conferencing technology and save $350,000 in 1 year by not having to do a lot of mileage reimbursements, not having to do hotel reimbursements, meal reimbursements, and things like that. They also saved 21,000 out-of-office hours as well. I see Janet Sylvia from the University of Georgia just logged in. Hey, Janet. She's also found kind of similar things at the UGA as well, in terms of saving time and money, saving even eliminating hundreds of thousands of pounds of CO2 from the environment by not having those cars on the road. From on the academic side, we've seen numerous examples that are specifically tied to students using this type of technology and being more engaged, to having a direct impact on their grades. For example, a couple of courses at the University of Utah saw students' grades rise on average from a solid C to a high A, 24% increase because they had this amount of interaction. And I mean, stop and think about that for a second. I know I'm talking pretty quickly. I'm in New York. That's what you do. But that's really impactful. A 24% increase, average increase in students' grades. I mean, again, that's the difference between a low C and a solid A. That's incredibly meaningful, and that's ultimately going to lead to, I think, students succeeding. And obviously, the better a student does, the more likely he or she is to remain enrolled. And that actually obviously keeps those tuition dollars at your schools. And we kind of see that in this last example here from the California Community College system, in which they've actually been able to improve retention rates to 90% in their online programs, which is obviously a phenomenally high number for online programs. We know that traditionally they hover a little bit lower than that, often because students do feel a bit isolated. So I think it's all pretty impressive. And so I'd never taught before I ever started teaching. So really I wanted to know, how do I really execute all these things I've been talking about for years? I wanted to know, would I eat crow? I wanted to know, would my students take me seriously? You know, I think teachers are always worried about how they're going to be perceived, even though they're supposed to be the sages on the stage and the experts of their subject. And most importantly, my greatest fear before I started teaching was, will my mom roll her eyes at me? My mom was an English teacher for 30 years, and literally in her retirement, she reads somewhere between 8 to 12 books a week. She's by far the most well-read person I've ever met in my entire life, times like 100. And so the pressure I faced, when I told her that I was going to become a teacher of creative writing, it was probably one of the scariest conversations I've ever had in my entire life, because I thought she would just basically laugh me out of the room, because she's much more prolific and impressive than I am. So it was very scary, but she was nice enough not to at least obviously laugh at me, and she might have just laughed silently to herself, which I appreciated. So my course, I teach English 2133, is Introduction to Creative Writing. We cover 3 different genres. I've actually been trying to get it down to 2 recently. It covers poetry, nonfiction, particularly personal essay, and fiction. I have recently sort of eliminated a little bit of poetry out of it, so they can get a little bit more substantive writing. But most importantly, of course, it is entirely online. This is really a key because, particularly for creative writing, which I think teaching creative writing online is by far one of the most difficult subject matters to do in an online environment. My students, they are very typical and representative of what your students are in your online courses. They range from 18 to 68. The vast majority of them, I'd say at least 75% of them, are working adults with families. I'd say only about 25% of them are the sort of traditional 18 to 21-year-old students. Most importantly, they have very varied writing experience. Some of them have never written before in their lives. Some of them have been technical writers as professionals. Some of them dabble with creative writing on the side. So it's really a whole gamut of experiences that I have to sort of mold and kind of mesh together to make sure that I'm not kind of teaching down to the seasoned writers, but not kind of speaking over the head to those who have never really done it before. And obviously they're located primarily through the South. And if you just get a kind of an example here, for those of you who aren't too well versed in the geography of Mississippi, you kind of see the map here where some of the students are from. I am actually, so where my school is located is about 40, 50 miles north of Jackson, right here in a town called Goodman. But you see, really, they do range from all the way down to really actually New Orleans in Louisiana, up to kind of Oxford, up to the north of the state. So they really do truly represent the entire swath of Mississippi. And of course, as I mentioned, this is where I live. So if you really kind of look at it on the map, it's about nearly 1,200 miles from my home in Brooklyn to the campus in Goodman where the students are located. In terms of technology for the course, we use a number of administrative technologies. This should look very familiar to just about all of you. We, of course, use an LMS. They actually have a homegrown enrollment tool that sort of acts as a complement to their student information system. So I think this is obviously a pretty typical technological setup like you all use for your online courses, very similar infrastructure. So sorry, I've been talking a lot. Let me do another poll here. So give me a check if any of you have actually ever taken a creative writing course before. Give me a check if you have, and give me an X if you have not taken one. And again, those polling buttons are located just above our names. I'm actually curious to see your writing experiences. Okay, so it looks like about a 1 to 2, 2.5 ratio. So what's really interesting about creative writing and why I thought this was going to be particularly challenging to do in an online environment is because the way the vast majority of creative writing classes are taught is really in a true workshopping environment in which an instructor gives assignments to their students. They go home, do their work, they write their stories, and then you come back and and it's very interactive where the student will typically read their work aloud, their classmates will comment on it, as well as the instructor. So it really is as collaborative as possible of an environment because it really is a combination of not just instructor to student feedback, but it's also ongoing peer-to-peer feedback as well in that true workshopping environment. So really the interactive element is paramount to a successful creative writing course. So I had to really think very long and hard, obviously, about how to kind of translate that workshopping environment with some lectures into the online environment, and kind of came up with it and realized that obviously I had conveniently at my fingertips this wealth of interactive technology that would really make a lot of it possible. So the way my typical course works is that I do 4 to 6 recorded lectures. Actually, I'll give them live and my students have the opportunity to watch them live. But because they're all typically different hours, I'll talk about, or different, they have different responsibilities in their personal lives. I don't make the live attendance mandatory because it just doesn't fit into all their schedules. But so I'll do basically overview lectures when I introduce a new subject. I'm able to incorporate voice boards for discussion, IM for office hours, voice authoring for feedback, and voice email for feedback as well. And I'll get into the weeds of all of these in just a couple more seconds. So let me do the poll here. So let me give me 1 second. Let me change the polling type. So the check and X is now turned to an A, B, and C. Give me an actually. Oh, let me actually wait. No, I'm going to back up a second. Let me add one more thing to this. Let me add in all of the above here. So give me an A if you use web conferencing at your school right now. Give me a B if you use Blackboard Collaborate Voice Authoring right now. Give me a C if you use BBIM, or give me a D if you use all of the above. And I'm curious to see, I'm guessing the vast majority, again, will all be using web conferencing, if any. All right, so yeah, that looks like that's pretty much the case, that the majority of you only use web conferencing and aren't using voice authoring and BBIM. Good, because you're going to love it once you see it in action. So I'll just gloss over the recorded lectures part because it's basically, so it's using what we're doing right now. I will typically give a presentation, a lecture. Usually I've chosen Sundays at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Central Time, because that is the time when most students are typically available. During the week, because I've got that mix of 18 to 21-year-olds and older working adults, their schedules are just all over the place. And so typically I think we all can kind of agree that Sunday nights is the time, practically speaking, when most people are sort of off duty. The kids might be in bed. You're just sort of home watching, I don't know, watching HBO at night or watching watching Sunday Night Football, whatever the case might be. That's when people are kind of home, and they might actually have some time to, and they have the most time to overlap with one another. So I'll introduce sort of just the overview of the course. I'll do an introductory live session at the beginning of every semester in which I kind of set the expectations of the course, talk about the technology, and then as I said, I'll do an overview lecture for each genre, whether it's nonfiction, fiction, or poetry. So let's get into the good stuff then. So what I'd like to do is start to incorporate voice boards for discussions. We all understand that discussions are very important and a critical piece of feedback, whether it's in workshopping, creative writing, or in any class. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn off my video for a second, and I'm actually going to share a voice board from my actual class, and we can kind of take a look at what that actually looks like for those of you who may not be too familiar with it. Hold on a second. Let me make sure I actually still have it open. There we go. All right, so you are now looking at the voice board that one of the voice boards that I use in my class. And so right here, the one I've got highlighted, actually, let me back up 1 second. So a voice board, for those of you who don't know, is exactly what it sounds like. You've all used threaded discussion boards throughout all your days. And this is also a threaded discussion board, but obviously you can just add your voice into it. And what's really kind of nice about it is that when you're recording or listening to any of these voice files inside the board, it's not actually it's not an actual sort of downloadable MP3 or WAV format voice file. It's which take up lots of room, take up lots of memory. It's actually a streaming file that goes to our data center. So it's actually a kind of a streaming voice board, which really doesn't, which just makes it easier because you don't need a lot of, you don't need like sound recorders or anything like that. It's all just kind of built-in streaming into your system. So right here, what I've done is I created an assignment for my students where basically what I had them do was I showed them a picture of a cactus in a desert, and my assignment was to kind of use that picture of the cactus as inspiration for a story and to start to kind of write a personal essay about that. And so then what I wanted to do, I used a voice board to kind of get their feedback about what they learned from the writing assignment. So here, let's take a listen to this. Actually, you know, I haven't tried this in years, so I don't know if I'm actually going to break the collaborate space-time continuum. So when I hit this play button, I will actually ask, let me know if you don't hear it, because I'm actually not sure if the audio from this will come through to all of you. So let's see what happens.
Hey class, this is Matt, and I want to welcome you to one of the voice boards that we'll be using this semester. So what I'd like to do for a fun, quick assignment is just spend 30 to 90 seconds telling me about the reaction you had writing and revising your story about the cactus picture. Maybe you had a good time and thought you wrote a creative, fun story. Maybe you learned a lot about the importance of dialogue and detailed description in a story. Or maybe you were nervous and just want to use writing about the cactus picture as a foundation for the rest of the class. So I just want to hear your initial thoughts. Please give me a vocal message as soon as you can.
Okay, got it. Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah, it wasn't, okay, so it sort of worked. So basically the idea, yeah, so you got the idea, thanks, right, Karen, is that I'm kind of just announcing the assignment, And then what's just really great for the student is that they obviously get all the responses here. So from my instructor stand, so as an instructor, I'm able to see and hear. So I can actually write supportive text, but I can hear all the responses that they're giving me throughout the entire lecture. And what's really important then is that this obviously does build a little bit more excitement. It builds a little bit more engagement, and it adds a nice sense of personality to the course, where suddenly now I think they can hear my voice. They get a little bit of a better sense of who I am as an instructor, and it adds a nice sense of personalization that I think you obviously just don't get in a regular kind of text-only board. And also it even helps me. I get to hear my students. I get to kind of infer a little bit of their personality. And one thing that I really do realize is that when you hear, the voice is really powerful. Just hearing inflection, hearing where a student might sound confident or sound like they're a little bit nervous, you really actually get to infer a lot of details about kind of what the thought process is of a student. And so I think these really become very valuable. And I think further what's great is that obviously you can use this for anything. I mean, in my own life, I've used message boards for talking trash in my fantasy football league, to responding to questions about a math topic, about a marketing topic, about a business course. So just really any time that you use a regular discussion board, which is all the time, you can certainly just use a voice board instead, and it just kind of steps it up 1 or 2 levels, because it really does give you that vocal, personal component that really does help kind of reduce that sense of isolation that a student might feel. So I really do think about the voice boards. It's good stuff, and I think it'll really kind of help things move along. The next thing I do is I use Blackboard instant messaging extensively for office hours. As I said, and I already acknowledged a couple of times, that my students, again, they've got crazy work lives, crazy personal lives, and if I just wanted to do a typical office hours where I said, all right, let's log into web conferencing every Thursday from 1 to 2 o'clock, I'll just be there standing by, that'll be my office hours. That just wouldn't work for probably 80% of my students, because they're working during the day, or they're working at night, or they're with their families, they're with their children, and whatever the case might be. And it's just, if you draw that sort of giant Venn diagram of when my students actually have availability for a live online session, I think the middle ground is it's about that big. So I really need to go out of my way as an instructor to be as flexible and accommodating as possible to their needs. So here's the pathetic joke part. I tell them I'm available from 8 in the morning until midnight. First, there are a couple of things I want to say to that. So first, yes, you can insert the pathetic joke there that even if I tell them I'm home on a Thursday night watching Parks and Recreation on NBC, you're really getting a sense of what I watch on television, which I never realized before. If I'm home watching TV, I'll have my laptop next to me probably 95% of the time, and if I hear a little ding that they're AMing me, I want to be there and respond to them. So I'll pause my show, we'll shoot some quick text or vocal messages back and forth to each other. And what's really key about that is that it allows my students to get immediate feedback. And this, I cannot emphasize this enough. When you're a student and you're doing your homework, and you've got a question, you're stuck, whatever the case might be, you want an answer right now. You don't want to have to send an email and wait for a response in 2 minutes or 10 minutes or 2 hours or 4 hours. You're doing something, you're fired up, you're in a good groove. You want that answer so you can keep going with your assignment. And that's what BBIM really allows me to kind of give to my students, is that immediate feedback so they can just keep doing and keep writing whatever it is that they're writing at that time. Now, obviously, the warning light that probably went off in all of your heads when I said that I tell my students I'm available from 8 a.m. to midnight is that, oh my God, that's unreasonable. If I told my instructors that, they would just laugh me right out of the room. I get it, and certainly I don't say that that is the typical experience, but what kind of having the IM client open at all times, what it allows you to do is to at least have that sense of availability. And frankly, like, I get maybe 10 IMs a week. So it's not an overwhelming volume at all. It's incredibly manageable. But again, what it does is just really having that sense of availability, I think, is very comforting to my students. And I want to see if I can actually pull that up as well. So let's show this with all of you as well and just kind of give you a sense of what it looks like. Okay, so let me minimize that and that. Okay, so right here, so I'm actually going to show you the IM course that's set up within my school's e-learning department, so I don't want to violate any FERPA laws and actually show more of my students' names. But you kind of get a sense of what it looks like. What's kind of good about IM, or what's great about it, I should say, is that first of all, it automatically pre-populates your entire course based on who's enrolled. So the second that, so this semester started on January 20th, I believe, for my school, and the second I logged into BBIM on January 20th, it had my class, it listed every single student right in it, and I could either invite them to download BBIM, or if they already had it, they were right there. So having that pre-population is excellent. And as I said in the beginning when I was kind of asking who uses this, obviously the first question when we say that Blackboard offers an instant messaging tool is, well, why do I want another instant messaging tool if I have Yahoo Messenger, MSN Messenger, or iChat, or Google Talk, or AIM, or whatever the case might be? And my response to that is, the reason you need this is exactly because you and your students already have Yahoo Messenger, and MSN, and AIM, and iChat, and Google Talk. If I had to download every single IM client that every single one of my students used, I would have 15 IM clients that I would have to use and download and have available at all times. And that would just be a giant pain, frankly. I think you probably all agree with that. So what BBIM does is obviously first, besides just getting everyone on a single unified common platform, so you suddenly don't need 15 different IM clients, but also, as I said, it's so organized. Well, from a student standpoint, from a faculty member standpoint, it pre-populates everything because it's pulling information from your LMS, from your student information system. So it automatically pre-populate your courses with those students, with the instructors, with the TAs, whoever has those credentials for that course, and you're available right away to be able to do that. And you get little things that you can pull up, you can send profiles of yourselves as well. But what's really great is that beyond this, and I want to thank, it looks like Karen, who's logged into this course. Hey, Karen. You can actually go beyond just text as well, is that you can actually do, you can actually speak vocally with the microphone. You can actually do an instant video conference. You can do application sharing as well, all real-time on the fly. So if I've got a student who IMs me at 8:30 at night, if it's just a quick text question, I can respond really quickly textually, or I can go much more in depth. I can simply just hit this talk button. We can start talking immediately in real time. I can actually, if they've got a real detailed question, I can actually have them application share the essay that they're writing, and I can respond and go through it line by line in real time with them. So it goes so much more beyond just traditional IM as well, because you can take in all of these other interactive components. So and frankly, I can't imagine doing my class without it, because I think it would just do a giant disservice to my students, because most of them would never be able to meet with me personally, just because of all their schedules and how different they all vary from one student to another. All right, so a couple of things left to go here. So first, using voice email for feedback. This is huge. How many of you, so I'll change the polling type back here. Give me a check if you ever give vocal feedback online to your students, or give me an X if your faculty don't. And I'll probably about 50-50. I think it's obviously not the most original idea in the world, but this is a nice way of doing it as well. So as you continue to vote, I'll talk through while we vote. So what's really neat about this is that using voice email through Collaborate integrated into your courses, it allows you to really just ultimately save a lot of time. As you see right there, I've got 25 students in a typical semester, and a typical assignment is about 4 pages. So just for a single assignment that I give, I've got to grade as an instructor 100 pages. And if you look at the second bullet point, it's a writing class, so I just can't gloss over a couple of paragraphs. I've got to go through with a fine-tooth comb and through every single sentence that every single student writes to make sure that they're learning, to make sure they're being productive in doing their work. And So you can imagine that when I started doing this course, I basically used track changes inside of Word to do the grading, to make the comments, and it killed me. It totally killed me. I mean, it took me forever. It took me an hour to grade one paper, half an hour to an hour. It was so time consuming. Writing out every single, writing out grammar changes, or writing out thematic comments, whatever the case might be, it was taking up so much time. And I just, for some reason, didn't realize that I should have just been using voice email the entire time. So if you jump to the last bullet point, and I'll say this for emphasis, is that I save nearly 40 hours a semester by giving vocal feedback instead of textual feedback. And I think it's better feedback too. So instead of having to open up track changes and insert a little comment dialog box into a document, I can say with emphasis in my voice, I can emphasize certain things they're doing well, certain things they're doing poorly, certain areas that they need to show more improvement, whatever the case might be. If they can hear it in my voice, they're getting that real valuable feedback. And for me, it saves me so much time. I guarantee if you go back to your faculty members and just, if there's one thing you take away from this entire 45-minute presentation, say, hey, Matt saves 40 hours a semester in grading by giving vocal feedback in his class. I guarantee you that will get the attention of a lot of your faculty members. So it's something that I highly recommend. I can't recommend it any higher. It's great for the students because I can really drive home certain points to them, and it's great for me because it just saves me buckets and buckets and buckets of hours every semester. So again, it's kind of wrap up here. Just a couple of things. There have been a number of really great quotes that I've gotten, and the reason I actually showed these is because these are actually all unsolicited. These are just random emails I got one night, or I got throughout, or basically I wasn't sending evaluations or asking for feedback. This is stuff based on their own to me. So this one, you talk as students basically saying that she loves Blackboard and messaging and that she wishes all of her classes had it because she does get that immediate response. So she's looking for that immediacy, and she gets it by interacting with me when she needs it on her own time. And just last week, again, you good saying, honestly, this has been the best class that she's taken. And if you look at the last bullet point, it's because it's really talking about receiving thorough feedback, and that's a result of the vocal feedback that I'm able to provide her, is that you can just give so much more information vocally than textually in the same amount of time. So, so it's that sense of immediacy, that sense of getting very thorough, specific feedback. The students have really appreciated that, and I'm happy they've let me know. Final thing I want to point out, or second to last thing I want to point out, is that obviously through building blocks, all of this is integrated. It's so easy. You obviously never leave your environment. You just click on the voice board, it opens right up. You click on web conferencing, it opens right up. Whatever the case might be, click on voice email, it opens right up. So it's all integrated. It looks like any other thing that you're doing inside of your LMS. And most importantly, I could actually really, the last 5 years I've been able to sort of back up what I was talking about from the purely vendor side. In fact, I actually feel like I probably wasn't talking up certain things enough when I was only a vendor, now that I've had the full immersive teaching experience. And also, my mom doesn't roll her eyes at me anymore, and thinks that I have become a legitimate instructor now that I've shown her some of how my students have grown. So that's, to me, that's the real takeaway, is that my mom takes me seriously, which is very important. So Isabella, have you seen something complain about problems with playback on your voice emails require special Java? So it does require just usually whatever the updated Java is. Yeah, once a semester I'll have usually one student have a problem. I basically just tell them to reinstall Java and they're fine. For example, this past semester when I had the new voice board, I actually had 2 comments from students about Java, but they just uninstalled it, reinstalled it, and were fine. So yes, it happens, but it's only 1 student or 2 students. It's not, and they're always able to correct it quickly. So I wouldn't let that get in the way or stop you of doing it. There will be 1 or 2 hiccups probably, but they're very, very, very easily overcome, and it's fine. So good question. That's the answer. So with that, no problem. So yeah, connect any crew. So all right. So with that, let me know if you have any questions or comments. Try to keep this to 45 minutes. But again, just big takeaways are it's just the engagement, the interactivity, the saving time from the instructor standpoint. All of these have helped my students grow. They saved me a lot of time. And honestly, if I ever had to teach an online course again and didn't have this entire swath of collaborative technologies at my disposal, I wouldn't teach, because I feel like I'd just be doing a really big disservice to my students, not using all these tools that are available to them. So yeah, thanks, Janet. It's an amazing class. It's the best class any